You are listening to This Week in Clown World with Ben and Hobbs, so sit back, relax, take your black pill, and enjoy the show.
Ha! What up, nerds? It's time once again for another episode of This Week in Clown World. You're in Clown World, and we're here to tell you all about it. Boy, howdy did things get clowny today. How you doing, Ben?
Yeah, in case you couldn't tell what that intro was, if you're some sort of hugglepoof or whatever the have you kept up on the old Harry Potter transphobe thing?
All I know is that it surpassed Fallout. It surpassed Cyberpunk 2077. It is literally the most popular game in the world, and every article from every left-wing games journalist says, despite the controversy, and it's like, bitch, it's because of the controversy. 90% of the people who are buying this game would not have given one single dusty fuck about this game if you freaking aggrieved weirdos hadn't been shrieking about it. Hell, I'm thinking about going out and getting it.
Yeah, I watched those movies. They were fun. And you know, same thing. If I play my gaming on a cloud gaming service, if it shows up there, you know, I might think about it just to check it out after all this shit going on.
Yeah, that's if you can find a copy of it, because people are posting pictures of their GameStop bags with like 5 or 6 copies of it.
Well, and the way they just went all in on this thing, the social justice wars. There was a website that was tracking people that stream it on Twitch so they could harass them. No doubt they would probably try and dox them and harass them that way too.
Yeah.
J.K. Rowling says women are women. I have no idea what she said either that pisses people off so much.
That's what she said.
That's
women
all
are women.
Yeah.
Women are women, and like women's bathrooms need to be for biological women, and women's sports need to be for biological women. That's it.
I saw something posted that said by buying this game, they're supporting the war on transphobes. Like J.K. Rowling is some sort of general in the transphobe wars, and you're funding her art. leave it to a bunch of Harry Potter nerds to create some melodramatic situation where J.K. Rowling is the snake face guy. Shit.
Yeah.
Voldemort.
Yeah, you know, I now that you've just said that, I've got this like, there's a meme brewing in my head of like an old World War II propaganda poster.
Mhm.
Where they're like, you know, it's like the guy's on the machine gun, and the belt going into the machine gun is like war bonds. Only instead of war bonds, it'll be copies of a Hogwarts Legacy. It'll keep keep them in the war on or something. It's a work in progress, but I think you can visualize what I'm visualizing here.
So yeah, it's backfired terribly. That website I mentioned, I guess they took it down eventually. And they were just I saw some screen captures of how they were treating these people caused some, you know, chick, she has like 5 people watching, and this mob of people showed up just berating her, and she ended up crying and shutting her stream off.
Yeah. So Roads to Liberty has a Twitch channel. I set one up, and I used it a little bit when I first set it up. If anybody out there wants to see me stream Harry Potter Legacy, it can be done.
How long till that sucker gets shut down? Yeah, I mean, it's great to see. At least they made a decent game too. You know, if it was a shit game and this happened, but I guess it's highly reviewed game.
Yeah, like even the left-wing games journos are like, it's actually like got good graphics and it's fun. And then like these mobs of weirdos are coming, I thought you were on our side and blah 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 blah.
The other thing in gaming and supposed transphobia, are you what's the game with shit, I already forgot the name of it. I got a picture of it here. Necromorphs.
From, Dead Space.
Dead Space was re-released. So
yes. Where'd you go? Where'd you go, Ben? Ben, come back. Well, anyway, I don't know if he's.
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
no, I was just trying to make myself smaller so we can make this bigger and see how they're making this analogy. So they're calling trans people necromorphs after this game came out.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't understand where they're coming from with it.
I actually shared a screenshot that explains it, and it'll take me a little bit to find it, but the gist of it is that so allegedly in the Dead Space remake, the makers of the game they changed some things around. They like made some characters into, women of color when they were like men before. And they all of the bathrooms, I guess, are like gender neutral bathrooms now.
In the game?
In the game, yeah. And so people were like, "Oh, come on, man. You guys don't need to pander like that, and that's all silly and everything." So, okay, so I found it here, and I don't know how much we could say on YouTube, but we don't have a big enough audience, so fuck them. So it says an unofficial PSA in regards to a new slang, necromorph. Because phobic people like to ruin everything, there is a very disturbing trend that has spawned in regards to this game. To make it short, fascists were so triggered by the changes to the bathroom signs that they are starting to appropriate the word necromorph as a slang for trans people. This is becoming prevalent on the Chan websites as well. The LGBTQ gaming community I'm in has been keeping tabs on the abuse of the word necromorph and how quickly it's picking up. And then there's a Discord link there. It says, this is all to alert people against hate. Keep an eye on how the word necromorph is being used. If it seems suspicious, report them for hate speech and or harassment. If it's someone that you know, please tell them they need to watch how they use the word because it could actually be accelerating and contributing to hate. Keep hate out of the game and keep people from injecting hate into the game. Hate has no home in the gaming community. And then it goes over to a green text. Why is necromorph becoming a slur and what caused it to stick? 1. People are expressing their outrage for the pointless changes in the game by using a game-related term. Through this, they can't be censored, blocked, or banned. 2. Necromorphs are mangled abominations of once human biology, and one recurring feature resembles a botched male-to-female surgery on the necromorphs, the large gashes from the belly to the groin. 3. Occasionally, cadaver tissue is used in gender reassignment surgery. This is primarily why it's sticking so effectively. Necromorph, Greek for dead change. What is the trans community thinking about this? In the same way that Chud was embraced by right-wingers because the movie was pretty awesome, the trans people that are being called necromorphs are touting that it's awesome and not offensive at all without knowing the reasons why necromorph is sticking so effectively. So feel free to call them necromorphs to your heart's content. TLDR, EA Games made unnecessary changes to the game for the sake of pandering. People are upset. Trans people are now being called necromorphs despite the changes, as well as the fact that cadaver tissue is used in gender reassignment surgery. So there you go.
There you got necromorphs. Okay, yep. Well, that's Facebook hasn't shut us down, even though we've been using the T word, so that's amazing.
Yes.
Between Hogwarts Legacy and Dead Space, I guess that's the first time we've talked about gaming stuff on here, and trans stuff is intersected.
Right. Yeah. Usually the Gamergate stuff has been pretty effective at gatekeeping.
Well, just the whole setting of that I guess they added a trans character. It's set in like what, the 1890s or something.
I don't know. I don't know anything about it, but I believe that I saw something today that the trans character that they added at the last minute is nothing more than they just gender swapped a bartender. So it's a female bartender, but it's still using the male voice actor's voice. So people are like, oh, we got a trans person in here. And it's like, you guys just did.
Hey, want a butterbeer? Yes, ma'am.
Pretty much exactly. Yeah, pretty much exactly that. and it's jarring, it's off-putting.
Well,
But
and why did they pick this? I wonder, because as I understand, there's a huge Harry Potter thing at Universal Studios, but they aren't rioting over that and showing up in mass and protest. It seems so weird that that whole social justice community would unite behind fighting a video game of all the things to worry about.
if you try to make sense of their train of logic, you will make yourself go insane.
Yeah, I guess they just ran out of causes at this point.
Yeah, I imagine it's something more along the lines of a video game, even a AAA new release, which is usually like 60 or $70. That's still attainable for most people, whereas a vacation to Universal Studios is a little bit financially beyond the scope of jobless gender communists.
I guess so. So there you have it, people. This episode brought to you by Hogwarts Legacy.
Fuck, I wish we could get that sponsorship. That'd be awesome.
I'll even pledge to House Hugglepoof or whatever. But the balloon this week, that was the big clowny moment. They shot it down last week, I guess, but they've been tearing into the thing this week.
Yeah. I think that it was really nothing more than China just poking, like, hey, look what we can do. And you know what your leaders are going to do? Fucking nothing.
Well, I kind of thought that too, but now here's a great opportunity. If you're going to spy, you never want something like that to fall into enemy hands, because then they can say it was doing whatever. And, it came out today, they're saying, yeah, it was able to listen in on cell phone frequencies and other communications. Yeah, shit, state is doing all sorts of stuff. China's got no recourse. We got their balloon.
Yeah.
State's doing everything at this point. Yeah. Say it was sniffing cell towers, talking to the Huawei cell sites, picking up data. Sky's the limit. They shouldn't have let their balloon fall over us.
Yeah, it's so stupid. Like one of the conspiracy theories about what it was doing was that it was just a defensive probe. Like, let's see how far we can get this very, very, very obvious thing into the United States' airspace before they do anything about it, and that it probably had nothing in it of consequence. So, yeah, I think that's probably a possibility. But up there, like 50 to 80,000 feet is prime airburst altitude for an EMP device.
Yeah. Well, and then it came out, what'd they say? They tried to say 2 of them flew over during the Trump administration. They didn't do anything. And the Trump administration is like, bullshit. And then they're like, oh, well, they did, but we just didn't tell them.
Yeah, and it's like, so it's gone from incompetence to treason. Yeah. Oh, is this really the road you want to go down?
And that whole comment just kind of faded into the background. It's like, so you're not telling, and you know why they didn't tell Trump, because Trump would have blew his stack on it if China's sending balloons over. His base would have loved Trump losing his shit over Chinese spy balloons floating over.
Oh yeah, and so yeah, I did hear about that, and they said that they 2 of them flew over during the Trump administration, and they just didn't tell anybody. And people were like, "Oh, so like I said, it's like, oh, so you're failing to inform the chain of command up to and including the commander in chief about a potential adversarial incursion into our airspace." And then the story changed to, well, they didn't actually go into our airspace. They didn't fly over the United States. They flew near Texas and Florida.
Yeah. So at first it was 2 of them flew over Texas and Florida during the Trump administration. Then it came, oh, well, they did, but we just didn't tell them. And then it's like, oh, well, they actually didn't go over. They were just kind of skirting the border. So no big deal.
Yeah.
And another one, how about did you see the lasers over Hawaii story?
I just saw a picture of it before we started, and I haven't heard anything about it. But I guess, yeah, there was like some laser show going
Yeah, it
over
looked like
Hawaii.
LiDAR or something. So these lasers go shooting over Hawaii like it's scanning the terrain. And right away, the media is like, oh, well, it's probably NASA. NASA's like, no, that's not our shit. Then the story dies. And then, internet sleuths, they figure out that, no, it turns out it's a Chinese satellite that was going over that area at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't seem sketchy that China's building detailed maps of Hawaii.
Yeah, the home base of the Pacific Fleet. Yeah, no big deal at all.
No big deal there either.
Yeah, well, let the Chinese be warned. The last time an East Asian country fucked with our boats in Hawaii, we unleashed the power of the sun.
Yeah.
And we'll do it again. Don't mess with my boats.
You can't trust it. I've said it on other episodes. You can't trust the Chinese for nothing, it seems. Anybody's read a history book sees that.
Yep.
I mean, it's an ethno state.
Communism.
China is always China number one. Everybody in China is China number one. They don't give a shit about anybody else in the entire world. China number one.
Yep. So I think that the big story today, now that we got kind of the funny little things out of the way, is Nord Stream 2. Boy, howdy. That speaking of treason and war crimes, that one right there, in all seriousness, I think that congressional Republicans need to find their balls on this one, and congressional Democrats need to put aside the party loyalty, because what the Biden administration and the intel communities did with this Nord Stream pipeline thing is unprecedented in the last 100 years. Unprovoked, at a time when no declaration of war, no open hostilities, we blew up a piece of civil infrastructure that not only was a piece of civil infrastructure supplied by a potential nuclear armed ally, but it was also supplying to a NATO signatory in Germany and the rest of Western Europe eventually.
Well, and right away they started trying to discredit this guy that released the story. I forget his name, but he broke the Abu Ghraib story. What was the one he broke before that? Do you remember?
He's broken a lot of big stories, but Abu Ghraib prison abuses was the one that was probably the biggest and the most recent, and the My Lai massacres.
The My Lai massacre. That's the one I was thinking about. They automatically started discrediting him. He's a conspiracy theorist. He gets debunked all the time. This story only had one source that he was using. How many freaking people do you think knew about this thing going on? You're not going to have dozens of people coming forward.
No, you're not going to have dozens of people coming forward. Something that's this big, you're going to expect to have a single source. And the people in the mainstream media that are trying to discredit him on the single anonymous source thing need to take a look in the fucking mirror, because we spent 5 or 6 years listening to unsubstantiated, basically National Enquirer level rumor mongering from these spurgs that were talking about every little leak that come out of the Trump administration. So I don't want to hear the single anonymous source. Well,
and I love this comment I saw. It's like Putin started pushing this story out to his state-aligned media immediately.
You think?
Well, that never happens here. We never get stories pushed out to the state-aligned media. What is that like?
Yeah, really. So I'll have to check I've been meaning to do it today. Maybe somebody down in the comments can do this while we're talking. But they could check the timeline as to when Nord Stream blew up, when Russia invaded. Because according to Cy Hirsch's Substack story, the bombs that blew up the Nord Stream pipeline were planted 3 months in advance. So it was, remember when it blew up, people were, going through GPS and positioning and everything, trying to figure out, this ship was in the area. It could have feasibly done it. We were expecting that the bomb had been, planted, or the drone or whatever it was had been used that day to blow it up. But it turns out that 3 months in advance, they used a joint NATO naval exercise called Baltops 22 as the cover. So you had all of these NATO navies were in the area doing just, a routine joint naval exercise. And while they were doing that, Navy combat divers were going down to the pipeline to plant these bombs. And they left them there for 3 months. And then 3 months later, they signaled from another country, because Russia said that they had signals intelligence that the detonation signal was coming from some uninvolved country. So to just kind of throw them off a little bit, and they were they of course were called quacks and kooks and whatnot. But Tucker Carlson talked about this last night on his show, and you can say whatever you want about Tucker Carlson and everything, but he brings up the good point that the Cy Hirsch story is so detailed that it can't not be true.
Well, and it's perfect cover if you think about it, because the way they track all those ships, they're like, all right, well, this ship was here, and then shut their transponder off. Well, probably every freaking military ship out there had their transponder off, but it was under, we're doing an exercise.
Yeah.
Perfect cover. I mean, it sounds like something that, unless you get some documentation link for the source, it's going to be hard to prove it 100%. You know what I mean?
Yep. The thing that's so squishy about this too is that the dive team that they used were regular Navy. Like, they weren't SEALs, they weren't Green Berets, they weren't any part of US SOCOM, because SOCOM has to report every single covert operation that it does to the Defense Committee in Congress. So they used regular Navy to avoid having to do these reports. Then, on the eve of it, they reclassified it from a military operation to an intelligence operation by the CIA and the DIA with regular military support, so they didn't have to report the after effects to Congress. And in the time span between the bombs being planted and the bombs going off, Joe Biden gave that little speech where he was like, yeah, if Russia invades, there will be no Nord Stream 2. We've got ways of, and people were just like, is he just stupid? Is he just like telling people that he's going to sabotage it and whatever? No, what he did was he probably said that on purpose. And this is probably giving Joe Biden too much credit, but one of his handlers probably came up with this. So that after the fact, when they're like, oh, you covertly blew up somebody else's civil infrastructure, blah, blah, and, oh, there's nothing covert about it. The president said it right there on national TV in a press conference, So there's just layers upon layers of things to unwrap here. And it is the shadiest shade. This is an impeachable offense. People need to go to jail. And if one single person in Europe froze to death this winter, I'd say murder charges are in order.
They used regular Navy. That's it. How? What if it's some portion you guys are op for during this exercise? So we're going to simulate a. These guys carry this shit down and put it on the months later. They're sitting at home. Nord Stream 2 explodes. They're giving each other the side eye.
Yeah. And you know what? I would not be surprised if that's exactly what it was. Oh yeah, this bomb is fake. It's a training aid. Go put it down on that pipe, and don't worry about recovering it. It'll biodegrade or whatever.
Why else would you use regular Navy divers?
So that SOCOM wouldn't have to report.
Yeah.
So
during a training exercise, well played.
Yeah, clever, very clever. So yeah, so not only did they do something wrong, they knew it was wrong, and they were taking every reasonable precaution to keep anybody from finding out about it. Unfortunately, it seems like somebody in the Defense Department got a conscience and leaked this to Cy Hirsch, who wrote his Substack article about it, and it's everywhere now. Let's see what happens.
Well, yeah, and if you're trying to figure out the credibility of this story, what would this guy have to gain by publishing this? I mean, he's already made a name for himself. Like you said, My Lai Massacre, Abu Ghraib. I mean, it's not like he's some young no-name reporter trying to make a name who might listen to any schmuck he comes across giving him a story. No, this guy knows how to break stories. He knows how to look and see if they're legit. He doesn't really have anything to gain from it. I mean, maybe a little bit of fame from releasing the story, but he's going to catch a lot of flack. There's nothing for him to gain.
He's been doing this for 50 years. Like you said, he's made his name. He's got very little to gain and everything to lose by publishing bullshit. You know, this is exactly like what we talked about when we were talking about the skeptical doctors during the COVID vaccine rollout. It's like these doctors like Malone and McCullough and whatnot, they have everything to gain or everything to lose and very little to gain by coming out as skeptical, whereas Pfizer and Moderna and all of these companies have billions and billions in profits to gain and literally nothing to lose because they're indemnified from all liability since 1986. So when you have somebody who's putting it all on the line, I tend to believe that they're not full of shit to the best of their knowledge. They're probably not lying to you. And the same thing goes for this Seymour Hersh guy. He has everything to lose if this story is bullshit. So he's probably not posting bullshit.
Yeah. So this will get buried, I suppose. Nobody's going to pick. None of the regular media is going to pick this story up. I mean, and Tucker Carlson, he keeps dropping bombs, but nothing seems to happen. I mean, well, his Kennedy one, you thought that would have.
You'd think. But Tucker is increasingly being sidelined. He's the most popular TV presenter in America. He gets more views than like CNN's entire lineup combined. And yet he's being sidelined in a lot of the mainstream press as like mainstream Alex Jones or something. And unfortunately, it's leading some people to believe that he's just, another tinfoil hat guy. But regardless of whether the story is true or not, the American people deserve at least an investigation, because if it is true, our government is committing high treason and war crimes in our name. And if it's all bullshit, we still deserve to know that if it's bullshit. This does not get hand waved away. These are serious accusations that need to be investigated, need to get to the bottom of these things. The Russian government needs to be apologized to if it's true. And because this is the type of thing that nuclear exchanges are built off of. This sort of thing makes the Cuban Missile Crisis look tame in comparison, because nothing got blown up in the Cuban Missile Crisis. We just had an adversarial country get their assets kind of close to our border. Meanwhile, we're blowing up their civil infrastructure unprovoked in the name of a war for a country that we're not allied with. And these people are just like, no, it's not a big deal. We just do this sort of shit. Bullshit. Bullshit. Sort yourself out.
Well, and what country went along with this on it? Was it Denmark or?
From what I heard this morning, the island that is nearest to the Nord Stream, where the pipeline blew up, is controlled by Denmark. Now, whether or not they had a hand in it or not, I don't know, but that was the nearest sovereign landmass to the explosions, I believe.
And then you got to look at, obviously what the U.S. has to gain by blowing it up is I mean, that's easy to see. I'd be curious if Denmark had something to, I think they have their own pipeline actually. So wouldn't be surprised if that's true.
Well, one of the whole reasons that the Nord Stream pipeline exists in the first place is because it transports natural gas straight from Russia into Germany without passing through any intermediaries. And Russia has other pipelines that go from them into Eastern and Western Europe, but they pass through intermediaries, specifically Ukraine. And Ukraine was getting a transit tax on all the natural gas that was coming through their territory. So that's why Russia decided to invest in building Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, because they were tired of paying Ukraine just for the land that their pipeline was sitting on, especially since they, up until that point, they still had a bit of an adversarial relationship. It didn't make any sense at the time why Russia would blow up their own pipeline. It doesn't make any sense now. And one person that I was listening to today said that one of the reasons that America would stand to gain by blowing up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline is that Western Europe would then be dependent on American energy. But that doesn't make any sense because the Biden administration is doing their level best to gut our energy. So that one doesn't hold water either. But the destruction of Nord Stream 2, to me, was a huge gamble on our government's part, because blowing up the Nord Stream 2 was done to cut off the only leverage that Russia had over our NATO allies in Western Europe, specifically Germany. So somewhere along the line, either they war gamed it out and did the calculus and said that, okay, if we take this leverage off, then Germany's going to hop on board with us, because what other choice do they have? But did it not occur to them that Germany could have been like, dude, you cut off our heating oil right before winter, fuck off. We're jumping in on Russia's side in this NATO Article 5 be damned. So I don't know, man.
And that war still is just a drudging on shit show. I mean, what I see somebody said today, they're sending those tanks over there is just making death traps for whoever climbs into them. Former M1 Abrams commander.
Yeah.
Russia was getting fired on by their own allies. Apparently some of their conscripts showed up near the hometown that they were conscripted from, and they decided, fuck this shit, I don't want to be in the army, and started firing at their Russian commanders, which I could see. It sounds like I could see that happening. I mean, you get drafted and they station you at your hometown. Fuck it, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
It's just like a never-ending thing here.
Well, it's going to come to a close fairly soon. Unfortunately, the Ukrainian military is practically bled dry. Russia has gone from the low-intensity special action that they were initially engaged in, and they're ramping up troops to just finish it. 10 million Ukrainians have been displaced when the pre-war population was like 34 million. You've got upwards of 500,000 soldiers dead. The Ukrainian army is dragging 16-year-old boys off the street and drafting them into the army because they're just that low on manpower. And 2 battalions worth of tanks 6 months from now, too little too late. So this thing, I'm afraid, is going to be coming to a close fairly soon. Now, one thing, actually more than one thing, a few things that make this particularly nasty is Poland has extended the offer to annex part of Western Ukraine and declare it a Polish protectorate, which would then trigger Article 5 if any attacks came in.
Repeat that again about Poland, because I think I made this comment a while ago.
This was something that you and me and Alex talked about when this whole thing first started kicking off, was that by the end of this, Russia is going to control the eastern third of Ukraine. Romania is going to peel off a piece of Western Ukraine, and Poland is going to peel off a piece of Western Ukraine, because those are their ancestral lands. And sure as shit, Poland extended the offer to annex part of Western Ukraine as a Polish protectorate in order to try and get NATO involved, because for whatever reason, Poland is just itching to trade fire with the Russians, and I don't understand it. I mean, there's a lot of bad blood there, but in the age of nuclear warfare, don't do that.
I don't know. I think Poles are fighters. I'd take them in a rumble with Russia. I mean, there's some old bad blood there. I mean, to have your country come back from being completely disintegrated to where they are now, I'm liking those odds on those guys.
Yeah, but I mean, they've come so far since the end of World War II when they were under the Nazis, to the Cold War when they were under the communists, to what they are right now. Don't put that at risk, guys. Just keep charging forward. Don't look back. Don't try to settle old grudges, because you will lose.
You know, and I'm sorry, Ukrainians, but if your country gets split up, well, it is what it is. You guys, it's only been around for not very long. I forget the exact history on it. And every chunk of Ukraine was somewhere else at one point.
Yep. The other thing that is so terrible about modern warfare is that the combination of widespread media, instant access to media, propaganda, all this other stuff. There's an old saying that an enemy is not defeated until he considers himself so.
Right.
And unfortunately, we live no longer in an age of honorable defeat, where your commanding officer says, "Okay, we surrender," and you walk up to the enemy commander and you hand him your unloaded pistol or your sword or something, and that's the end of it. And everybody under your command knows that that's the end of it. Those days are done. We live in the era of obstinate insurgency now, where if your politicians or your commander says we surrender, everybody under the chain of command is going to be like, fuck that, I'm fighting to the death. And even if, hostilities cease tomorrow, Zelensky's out, commanders surrender, you're going to have this underground insurgency that's just going to.
Why would Russia want to try and control that territory after this? It's going to be, I mean, you've got 30 years of people fighting America under those situations for them to take experience from. I mean, they're going to be losing shit left and right if they take that area over.
Yeah. So I talked to Alex about this yesterday, and he explained to me that well, first off, Crimea is strategically important. They need the Crimean Peninsula because that's their only deep water port outside of Vladivostok, which is clear on the other end of the country. And that's not tenable because all of their manufacturing infrastructure, their heavy industry, is in the western side of Russia. You got all of that, Moscow, St. Petersburg, all that area there. And then you just got thousands and thousands of miles of nothing. And then you've got Vladivostok on the east coast. And it's not logistically tenable to make all of your stuff in the western part of the country. And then even Trans-Siberian Railroad is not enough infrastructure to ship it all the way across the Asian continent to Vladivostok in order to ship it out to the wider world. So they need the Crimean Peninsula. So that right there is part number one. Part number two, he said that Donbass is strategically insignificant. It's not important at all. The reason that they want to have Ukraine in general, but that part of the area in particular, is they want to have a demilitarized buffer zone between them and the obviously hostile NATO. They want no troops, no weapons, no nothing, because Moscow is an 8-hour drive from the Donbass region. So it's not only do you have an obviously hostile entity in NATO creeping up to your border, but you're, geographically speaking, all of your important stuff is also right there on the other side of that border. And with the ranges that we've got on our modern day artilleries and stuff, I see where Russia's coming from. Like, go away.
But how are they? That's a long border to secure. They'll have to do it quick too. I mean, securing Crimea was easy. It's on an island. You know what I mean? They're going to have to secure land. I mean, they already have a land border between Ukraine and Russia, obviously. but they're going to have to build this up quick, and they're going to have to maintain it and have troops along there all the time. It's going to be a shit show.
Well, see, I think that wasn't initially the plan. I think that what they were hoping was that the independent and semi-autonomous militias that were basically engaging in an ethnic purge in Donbass, the Ukrainian militias that were killing the ethnic Russians. I think that their initial plan was to go in, wipe those guys out, and then do all of the DMZ stuff at the treaty level. The whole idea is to have a demilitarized buffer zone with no troops, no security, anything like that. Just have this zone where nobody has any guns or troops or anything moving back and forth, and we can shake hands and be like, okay, let's move on. But of course, they floated this idea at the beginning of the war, and the Western powers were like, no, and shot it down, and then continued to dump money and guns into Ukraine. So now, rather than being a more or less lightly armed police-keeping force like they initially went in, Russia has put all their chips on the table and was like, okay, y'all want to fuck around? We're going to find out.
Shit, the amount of money we dumped in there, I think every household over there has a Javelin in the closet by now. Holy cow.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is that our stockpile of that sort of stuff is running dry. And we don't have the infrastructure or the resources to replace it at any clip. Whereas Russia's got their factories running 24/7, making war material, because their stuff is a lot lower tech, but it's easy to build in massive quantities, and it's more rugged. So they're just cranking it out. And they're right there logistically. They don't have to ship it across an ocean.
Man, who would have guessed we'd still be talking about this? It's over a year now?
Just about.
Yeah.
Almost, yeah. It's
probably be talking about it another year at this point. Maybe an occupation or something. Who knows how it's going to end up. And like I said, they have those weapons, but they've also really perfected the weaponizing these little JDI drones too.
Both sides.
Yep. So they're going to have those zipping around in their occupied area. I mean, they'll be throwing those up over, and maybe they're going to end up with the whole Palestine-Israel situation where, jackasses just start lobbing mortars over the border. Yeah,
there was a video that a Ukrainian troop posted up on, I think it might have been TikTok or Instagram or something. They weaponized one of those little quadcopter drones with Zyklon B. So that's making a comeback.
Jeez, let's not.
Yeah, as if the Ukrainian Nazi connections just weren't strong enough.
They just happen to have some Zyklon laying around, huh?
Yeah, and they had video of it being used on troops on the ground, and it was disturbing.
Jeez, we're just following a real World War I trajectory here.
Yeah, there was like 2 or 3 Russian troops. They were trying to get across the creek, and this little drone dropped these canisters, and they started coughing and fall down and spasming and nerve gas poisoning. So yeah,
let's not start that. Those poor fucking grunts. I mean, wearing your mop gear was the worst. I thought, maybe I'd rather just die than have to wear this shit all the time.
I mean, in a Ukrainian winter, the extra layers.
Yeah, probably nice. Yeah. In Texas, it wasn't too great where I was doing the training. But, oh man, we're going to bring chemical warfare into it, huh? So what's next? We're going to have, we're not going to have tanks. That's already been done. So we're going to move up to mechs, I guess.
We got the trenches, the tanks, chemical warfare now. Combat shotguns. Let's make them happen.
Making them come back.
Make combat shotguns great again.
Unsupervised 19-year-olds with a war crime stick. There we go.
And giant sword bayonets. Yes. Like knuckle duster trench knives and fucking baseball bats with nails driven through them. Fine, let's get medieval on people.
Well, and probably the last story we'll touch on maybe, and kind of ties in. Vermin Supreme left the Libertarian Party because of their anti-war lineup. I guess the Libertarian Party is putting on Rage Against the War Machine, and some of their speakers are drawing some flack and caused Vermin Supreme to leave.
The boot-hatted communist has decided to take his leave.
Yep.
Yep.
I enjoyed his stuff. His posts were kind of funny, interesting guy, but not sure the Libertarian Party was for him, but he stuck around longer than I thought he would.
True.
And this event that they're putting on, I guess what is pissing people off is they're saying there's some people that have ties to Russia. They submit a lot of stuff to RT. There was a guy who got uninvited, but they should have done their research on this one, but the guy got arrested for trying to solicit sex from minors, and they invited him to speak at their event. I mean, that's a simple Google search. When you type in the guy's name, it's like, who's running this shit? Jimmy Dore is going to be there. So the article I saw that told me right away that it was a progressive hack because he called Jimmy Dore a right-wing conspiracy theorist.
Oh my God. I've said it before. Like, at this point in the media, you call somebody a far right winger, it's a pejorative. You call somebody a far left winger, and they act like such a thing doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, everyone I don't like is a Nazi. Everyone I don't like is far right. Jimmy Dore is he's a progressive. He's like the universal
he wants
health
Medicare
care
for all.
Yeah.
It's like, how far left was the hack writing this Newsweek story that Jimmy is a right-wing conspiracy theorist? It's like
probably not much further left than Jimmy Dore, but right-wing conspiracy theorist is just, it's an insult. It's not a technical description. It's just an insult.
To shit on the Libertarian Party more, I'm a libertarian. Did you know about this event at all?
Shockingly enough, I heard about it on Alex Jones 2 days ago.
What?
Yeah. He has a guest who does his 4th hour on Mondays named Gerald Celente, who who was talking about it. So, yeah.
I mean, it has a decent lineup. They've got Tulsi Gabbard, some people from the Ron Paul Institute.
Yep.
I
think Judge Napolitano might be there.
Judge Napolitano, Scott Horton.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how do they get this lineup and where it's not getting pushed? It seems, I don't know. Might be the media blackout of libertarians is continuing.
Well, I follow a lot of libertarian Facebook pages to include a lot of Mises Caucus related, and I haven't heard anything. I follow Michael Heiss on Facebook, and he hasn't said anything about it that I've seen. I follow Ron Paul. I haven't heard anything about that. I follow guys like Maj Touré and several other people. And yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, the only coverage we get is Vermin Supreme leaves the party over the event. That's fantastic.
And this is a pretty weird hill to die on, Vermin. I'm pissed off that the LP is anti-war. What?
Well, where was his statement? The statement he made, profanity-laced tweet. To all, here it is. To all that were attracted to the Libertarian Party by my 2020 candidacy, I am sorry. It's become a terrible dumpster fire of a shit show. I regret my involvement in such a non-functional embarrassment full of paleo dipshit, pedo apologists, and culture war fuckwads. Fair enough on the comment about the pedo apologists, because after he said that, they uninvited the guy.
Yeah, but this is also the guy who's on the side of the drag queen story hour, and
he's very far left. I was surprised he stuck around as long as he did.
Yeah.
His big thing is he was anti-war, and if you're anti-war, I don't think there's another party for you to. If you're single issue and anti-war, there isn't another option.
Not at this point.
Nope.
Maybe the Greens, but they're an even bigger embarrassment than the LP, in my opinion.
Are the Greens anti-war? I don't know for sure on that one, but maybe.
Well, warfare is not exactly carbon neutral.
Or is it? You kill off enough people,
maybe
you get very carbon neutral. So yeah, that's big LP news that came up. Boothead didn't get booted. He booted himself.
I guess that boot was made for walking.
That boot. Oof. Yeah. I guess. But you got anything else for this? We hit on all our clowny action this week.
Yeah, we were half an hour late because I had to go to the store, and now I got to go up and go to bed. So,
yeah, thanks for joining us this week. Go buy your copy of Hogwarts Legacy. Go watch. If you watch Twitch, go support those guys streaming it. I guess just put it on a screen and leave it. That's your cheap way to support it. It shows people watching it, and we will be back next week. Stay honky.